It's one of those things that it feels like it's a never ending circle. Okay, so kids that have been physically abused or sexually abused, if they do not get proper care for them, end up being abusers themselves.
Yeah.
That is something that it has been, they've been doing research on. The district attorney's office has followed up with some of these cases, I guess over the years, and they see that they become offenders, whether or not they're sexual or physical abuse, but they become basically criminals themselves. Not all of them, but it's we see it happen. The ones that do get help because their parents are involved and they believe them, because that's the other thing with some of these children, that you have adults that do not believe children, that they were sexually assaulted by mom's boyfriend, so they grow up with that guilt. The other aspect of it is obviously that 90% of the victims are females. So that's the other thing. So, you grow up like that. But what we've seen is that because these children are going through this cycle, not getting the help, they're reoffending, they're becoming part of the problem. And then some of them become homeless because nobody wants to help them. Nobody wants to deal with them. And they start using drugs. So then it becomes a police problem because we're getting called out because, oh, this homeless person is doing this or that, or the drugs, the I mean, it's a never ending cycle. So it's severe trauma that it seems like it never ends, and it just doesn't affect the person that's assaulted. It affects the family as well, because most of the time, the people closest to the child or whoever it was, that even if it's not a child and an adolescent or an adult, the people close to them always feel like they let them down. Like, where was I? How could this have happened? And then if they don't seek therapy themselves, then it's just something that just never stops. And and it's crazy just how, I mean, you're asking about, the trauma and going around, but it's something that affects every aspect of life. It affects everybody that's involved, and sometimes people just don't even report it. And so, I mean, you got the ones that report it, that they don't get believed. Some of them get help, some of them don't. And then you get the people that just never report it. And they grow up to be adults. And as an adult, like when you see, cases where there was a sexual assault and there was proof and this person gets off scot free, most people don't want to report it to the police, to the authorities. They don't want to do anything about it. So it's just something that it just continues to affect the mental health. And it's not just your mental health at that point, it's your health,
Physical.
physical health. I mean, it's just, it's one of those things that I've seen, and I didn't say it out loud, but I mean, I've been on the department for 11 years, and I mean, I've never gotten a call about something good. Every single call, every single report that I've ever read is something sad, and it also affects us. And then over time, you don't see it, but it causes a decline in our health. But that's not the focus. But I'm just saying it's something that affects everybody in general.
So, as you, because abusers sometimes have no, they have no sense of innocence or vulnerability. There is no age too old or age too tiny. As long as it has a beating heart, it will try. Abusers will abuse,
Yes.
right? So when we would think about the long scheme of things, I remember, and I'll share this with you, and I'll share it with the audience online, that one of the things that I would tell my mom is, you you feel rotten from the inside. And I've always, like, I didn't know that not feeling rotten as a kid, right? Like a bad apple, you just feel rotten. Like, I'm not good. There's no way I'm a good person. There's no way I'm good. They must have seen something bad in me. Something like that must have happened. When you deal with survivors at this point, and you have to become vulnerable to them and to their needs. I'm really curious. What does that intake look like? Is it all just investigation, or is it more?
So yes, so say somebody makes a report next door. They make a report. The officer goes, takes the report, gives them the case number. They're also provided with a blue form. That blue form usually has some mental health resources. It's going to have the district attorney's office. It's going to have clinics on there. Most of the time, if it's something that just happened, they're going to ask them, hey, you should go to the hospital to get a kit done or some kind of medical exam, just so we have that there. That's going to be the primary officer's responsibility. That's right off the bat, is just providing those resources, getting as much information as possible. Once it comes over to our unit, then we receive it. It does take a few weeks because our division is one of the divisions that has all active cases, and so they all get assigned. And so it's just something that takes a few weeks to get to each and every single case. I only have 5 officers that intake for the entire city of Houston. So that's how many that have handled the thousands of cases that I've reviewed in the last 2 years. And so it's one of those things that once they gets to them, then they offer them the forensic interview. We sign them up. They also get with a social worker if CPS is not already involved, but with also a family advocate. And the family advocate provides them with resources, depending on which child assessment center they go to. But they usually have somebody that's going to kind of walk them through the process and provide additional resources as well. So it's something that once we have your case and you're assigned a detective, somebody should be communicating with you, which is the biggest thing. Most people that are a victim of a crime don't want to be like left in limbo. No one wants to feel like no one's listening to them or that no one's taking them seriously or that no one's doing anything about it. And one of my biggest things with my officers is saying, contact the family. Once you get in a case, contact the family, let them know that you've been assigned this case and let them know the next steps. Once people are aware of how their case is going to proceed and what we're going to do, they feel so much better. They feel a sense of relief. They feel someone cares about me, someone is listening to me. It's it's the time and the focus, sorry, is on the victim. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can provide is just for them to feel like someone's listening to them and that they're being believed. And then from there, obviously we go through the whole forensic interview. Then it goes to the actual assigned detective. They're the ones that are going to continue getting more information, which is like witness interviews, suspect information, and all that until it gets presented to the district attorney for charges. But it's that communication that I feel is the most important. So
So my next question is, when, because these conversations come up and my trauma comes in a different form, and I lose train of thought because it takes me right back to my feelings. It takes me, not even feelings, my emotion, and it's hard to detach from that. So when you talk about following up and you said there's only 5 officers, you need the public's help, right? You need the resources from the nonprofits, from the organizations, from whoever it is that can help, that's trained to help. What are some of the first signs of a child of being sexually or physically abused?
So those are going to be easy. Usually it's going to be a change in, I don't want to say their attitude, but a change in their behavior. A happy child that has no problem being around family or doing extracurricular activities, being with other children, going to school, using the restroom, stuff that they normal day-to-day basis. The minute that you see a change in their everyday behaviors, something is off. A child will only change their little behaviors here and there when there's something that is really wrong within them. And some children don't know if something is wrong, because they're innocent at that point. They don't know that, the person that touched them on their vagina or their penis, they don't know that that was wrong yet, but they know that maybe that was something that wasn't supposed to happen. And sometimes they don't report it right away. And so that's the reason why you see these like kind of withdrawn behaviors. These They'll do like bedwetting, for older children that they know how to use the restroom. They'll have nightmares. They'll kind of throw for the smaller ones. They'll kind of throw tantrums, is so we call them. They'll just be a little bit more difficult, and that's when we've noticed that some parents will actually start asking their child, "Did something happen to you?" And that's the question that you should always ask a child, not why are you acting this way, or in a what do you call it, in a mad way, because that only scares the child. You should always ask him, is something wrong? Is there something that you want to talk about? Because even as an adult, it would be nice if people would ask us that, are you okay? Like, is there anything going on with you today? And people don't realize that that goes a long way with both adults, women, and with children. And that's one of the things that I've noticed in working all these cases is the behavioral changes, the lack of anybody ever asking them if something is wrong. That's when the child will start talking. And you never want to ask them leading questions. And that means like don't ask them specific persons that did something or specific acts. You just start with what happened to you and tell me more. Or can you, they may not understand elaborate, but they may understand, can you give me a little bit more detail or show me how it happened? You have to talk to them like you didn't know what it was about. And that's really important, because y'all touched base on like talking to children and asking them that, because if you talk to children at a young age and they're able to share their emotions with you, because I do that with my kids, they should be able to express their anxieties, express when they're sad and when they're mad. Your child should be comfortable telling you, I don't want to be with that person because they made me sad. And then that is something that you should elaborate on. But just those are some of the little things: is behaviors, the way they act around others, what they do. Obviously grades in school and eating habits sometimes. I mean, maybe subtle things, but some of them, I mean, some kids start overeating, especially teenage girls. That's when they start overeating, is if something happened, because most of these crimes for girls happen between the ages of like 10 and 13. You start seeing like, weight gain, them not wanting to be social. I mean, those are big, big signs. So,
What what can, and I've asked everybody who was on this stage, what can I do as a family member or of as a friend whose child was abused, might be abused? And sometimes, I think somebody said earlier, unsolicited advice. Last thing I want to do is make anybody upset, because that's huge in somebody's life, because it's a pivotal turning point in somebody's life. But would you say it's probably not a good idea to tell your friend, hey, those behaviors, something might be what's up? Or what would you say as a police officer
like if you noticed it.
if I noticed it?
So, yeah. So, say if you're with your friend and you guys are out and your kids are having a play date and you notice something happening. I would never approach a child, depending on the age, as an adult, unless you have already talked to the parent first. And it seems that the parent is not responsive to it, because somebody has to be able to advocate on behalf of the child. So, a way to approach it would be like, I noticed, Timmy was, he's really shy, but one of the other things that I saw is that he kept grabbing his little area and just kind of saying like, no, no, don't touch me. And you start by A, talking about what you see, because it's something that you don't want people to think, well, it's just a feeling that she has, or it's something that she's just assuming, making an assumption. Okay. You want to always talk about what you can see, what you can verbalize it, obviously, and just kind of start with that. And sometimes it'll be like, oh, yeah, you know what? I never noticed that behavior, or I never noticed that he did that. And then you kind of get that topic going. We've actually had some cases where the child actually outcried to like an aunt or a grandma or just somebody other than the parent, because the abuser was mom's boyfriend or their actual father. So it's one of those things that they'll feel comfortable outcrying to somebody else, and that person is responsible for at least asking, like, well, did you tell your mom? Just to kind of, so that if they don't feel safe around their own mother, then that's a sign that maybe the mother is aware and they're allowing it to happen. Because like I said, I have seen so many things in all my years as special victims. And it's unfortunate that there are kids that are not protected by their parents and they're allowing this abuse to happen. And so those are the things that you can kind of verbalize and talk to another adult. And as far as like you telling like your own kids too, it's always important to let them know that they can talk to an adult, talk to them about their body parts, use the appropriate terminology for the anatomy. Don't let them use those, like cookie and all that stuff. I mean, it is something that they need to learn at a very young age. It's important for their own health. And if something happens in the future, we want them to use the appropriate words to be able to tell the audience what happened. When they're talking about their abuse, the trauma later on, they can never say, well, I mean, we never used those words, and so they were kind of stigma. So I just didn't feel comfortable talking to my parents about it. And that's what I hear from a lot of the adult complainants that were victims as children, and they're coming out when they're in their 25, 30 years old talking about it, because they were just, that's one of the things they say is like, well, they were just never taught to say anything or to speak out for themselves. And nobody really advocated for them. And so, and then, obviously we have run the problem of a lot of people just don't believe adult complainants, because they're like, well, why did it take you 15 years to disclose or to talk about it? Some people just process trauma differently. It takes them years to realize that something bad happened to them and they are physically becoming ill because they are keeping it inside and they need to talk about it. And that's when they're like, it sparks and they're like, I need to report this. I need to talk about what happened to me. And then just start that healing process after that. So,
So sometimes it's difficult to report, and so a lot of these cases don't get reported because it's, I'm not even sure it's statute of time. Or
so there's no
something like
statute of limitations on sexual based
that. Okay,
offenses.
okay. See, that this is where I'm so little knowledge on, because it triggers something completely separate for me. So when we are like, when we want to talk or we want to do something about it, and therapy isn't enough, and I as you know, some abusers continue to abuse until they're stopped. So say I want to take it upon myself to move forward. What would you say is the thing to not to do, but to be prepared for
During the process,
during the process, before, and maybe even after?
the biggest thing is knowing that these cases take a long time to investigate. They take several months. And then once a charge, and I'll say once, if a charge is accepted, because the district attorney's office is who accepts the charge, and then we can charge this person, they get arrested, they get placed in jail. But there's, again, so they can get bonded out.
Yeah.
So obviously you can still go through this thing, get them arrested, they could get bonded out. And then now you're dealing with, when are you going to go to court for trial for this? So that's what the biggest thing is, the patience, the time that's going to take. And there could be repercussions that you may not be aware of, because when it's a family involved case, once you actually disclose what happened, everyone's going to know your business. Everybody, because especially with the Hispanic community, like it's one saying, well, hey, did you hear about what happened? Let me tell you what happened here. Even if they're not doing it out of malice, it's when we start talking about it at family functions that it's like that's something that happened to somebody. We shouldn't be talking about this. This isn't a novela. This is real life, you know? And I've seen it personally, you know, I've seen it. And then just reading these cases, I'm like, what were they thinking? And I don't want to digress. I'm sorry. I could talk about this for so long, but it's just one of those things that you don't realize just how much you're going to be going through when these cases come up. But it's that's how it works. I mean, it takes a long time to get these cases ready because they require us to get medical records, therapy records if you have any, talk to every single witness, anybody that was involved, go to the incident location, even try to speak with the suspect. So we always try to at least, I guess, interview them if possible before we can present the case. But I mean, I went to trial a few months ago on a case, one of my last cases actually that I did as a detective, and that was back in 2020. And so, I mean, that's how long it took 4 years to go to trial. And it's because Harris County is just so backlogged. I mean, there's millions of people here. There are cases coming up every day. It's the unfortunate thing of living in such a big metropolitan city. But we are doing the best with the resources that we have. And I hope that anybody that reports this knows of how they work and that we are doing the best we can. I promise y'all, because I get a lot of phone calls. And I recently did an interview with Comunidad y Confianza with Sergeant Robles. So I guess that's why he had recommended me for this. But you know, I explain the process to everybody. I mean, some of these cases I read in when I'm like, ugh, like, my heart, but I just kind of have to, you know, as but I try to tell people when they call me, when the moms call me about their child's case, and I try to reassure them this case is going to get worked. It is an active case. It gets assigned, and it is going to be a process. I just need you to be patient. I know it's a lot to ask of a victim because it's like, well, I finally came out and talked about my abuse, and now it's going to take months for you guys to do anything and arrest this guy. Like, why can't you go and pick him up now? But you got to remember that it's what you prove in court because everybody's entitled to an attorney and they're going to get a defense lawyer. And anything that is not, if you don't get the appropriate evidence, they're just going to throw that case out. So you just did all this work for nothing. And that's what we strive to not do. What we want is for them to get due time in prison. You know, when you get your lifers, I mean, like I said, it's some of the cases that I've worked, I was like, wow, like when we went to court, I was like, all right, like I wasn't expecting that, but it made me feel good, even though it took 4 years to get to that point. Like, wow. And then the family remembers you. They understand that you were there, that you communicated, that you followed up. And that's what we want to do is just provide as much information and help that we can to minimize the trauma, minimize the future re-victimization of these victims. So anything that we can help with and give information on, we try to do as at least up front or even on the back end, because most of our detectives do have a working relationship with most of their complainants and the parents and whatnot. So
Thank you. So just one last time, where can I want to say where can I find you, right? How can I get in contact with you if I need you here in Harris County, Houston proper,
so
or at least your department?
So, I mean, I am the only intake supervisor for the Crimes Against Children Unit Sexual Abuse. So, if you were to call and ask, like, oh, can I speak with the intake supervisor? That would be me.
Okay.
I am housed at the Children's Assessment Center. That's where my office is out of because, like I said, we assign a lot of the cases and we sit in on the forensic interviews for the children there. That's also where they have a medical clinic for the kids and whatnot. So that's where I'm at. And I have a good working relationship with the forensic interviewers in the district attorney's office because, like I said, I presented a lot of cases back in my day. I say back in my day, but it was only like 2 or 3 years ago. But I've always strived to have a good, relationship with people outside of our network because you just never know when people may need you. And even if it's not like work related, it's like what resources could I provide you with? We all have our own internal things that we're dealing with. And like I said, I like I know you were talking about it. And look, I am doing this job because I had a chaotic childhood and I would never want my kids to go through it. But even before I had kids, I always wanted to do something that I felt like was actually making a difference. So I am purposely working in special victims because I was a victim myself. And I don't want to talk about it here because obviously I have a therapist that, thankfully I have a therapist. But when I started seeing health issues in myself, that's when I was like, there's something there. And it's the trauma from childhood, it's the trauma from adolescence, it's the trauma from bearing all this and seeing the reports. And you don't realize it until you're an adult, a fully grown adult, that it's affecting your health. So it does. And even, you can be a productive member of society after having gone through an abusive period, if that makes any sense. So it's something that you can do it, but you need help. You need the resources. You need ask for help, talk to somebody, because internalizing the trauma is never going to work. I guarantee you, it is never going to work. It's going to lead you to drug use, mental health issues, health issues. We're talking about diabetes, weight gain, unexplained weight gain, autoimmune disorders. I mean, this is an actual thing that they've done research on. And so it's one of those things where I try to tell people all the time, the moms that I meet with the kids, and I'm like, look, you need to take care of yourself too, because you cannot help your child if you're here just just so lost with the system or just so overwhelmed. I mean, that's why they tell you on the airplane to always put the mask on first before you help others. So it's the same concept. So anything that I can do to help, you let me know. I stay in my little bubble, but I do a lot of work behind the scenes. And so when Sergeant Robles reached out to me, I was like, oh, sure, I'll help. So I'm glad that I was able to come. Um, it's a lot. And Myra's gone, and I meant to say one of the things, and this is totally off topic, but 2020 was a rough year for a lot of people. COVID was around. My mom was actually still alive when Vanessa died. She was so distraught about Vanessa dying. She was like, I can't believe this. She's like, this is why I told you not to go into the military. And I didn't, because I ended up, going to college. But I remember my mom being so distraught about Vanessa's death. And I was like, oh, who is she? And, you look up, get information. And so that happened. COVID happened. My mom actually died of COVID that year. She got sick in November, and she died a week before Christmas. And it was just so, that's what it was just like when I say things come full circle, because I mean, this is the area that I patrolled. I've been out here my entire life. And when I saw her, I recognized her face, and I didn't want to tell her like, oh, we both lost somebody that year, because I felt like it would be inappropriate. But yeah, my mom actually passed away, and it's just the circle of life, how you meet somebody that's gone, that's gone, and how you can also lose a person. But it's just, I mean, yeah, that I thought that was, without knowing who was going to be here at the event, and the somebody reached out to specifically me. So that's why I say, like, you just never know how, the mind, the just how everything come full circle. So I just, yeah.
People will sometimes represent times in your life.
Yeah, I was, and I mean, I'm sad that she lost somebody that year too. But it's just, I mean, I grieve with her, and there was a lot of, it's a lot of trauma losing somebody.
Yeah.
Whether it's a child or sister or a mother. I mean, we all went through it in 2020. I feel like that year, if it didn't break you, it sure did humble you. So I'm gonna say that because
Yeah,
I
it
mean, that
really
was like,
did.
oh man, like you didn't know what it was like until then. So.
Sergeant Yetta, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I would open up the conversation to questions here, but because it can get very personal, Sergeant Yetta, if you can stick around, let those who want to talk to you come up to you to speak to you. Because I know it's gonna, again, it opens up a whole, and we're live streaming. So the last thing I want to do is have somebody regret something that they say or share.
No, yeah, we totally get it.
Yeah, so she'll be here off to the side if you want to speak with her. Stick around though. We will have our last session and then we'll close out. Sergeant Yara, thank you.
Yeah,
Ladies,
you're
just a
welcome.
small round of
Thank you.
applause.
Perfect. Is this thing on? Yes. Okay. All right, perfect. Well, thank you everybody for having us. Thank you for being here with us. I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Blandon. I am with the Houston Galveston Institute Counseling Center, and we're here to talk about mental health wellness, how it affects your soul, and also breaking the generational chains. And then I will allow my fellow therapists to also introduce themselves as well.
Well, hi, I'm Adriana del Muro. I am a guest right now at AGI, and I work and live in Mexico. I usually work with women that have had some kind of violent situation, and with communities, of the building of communities for women. So that's what I do.
Um, Good afternoon. My name is Juni Shrestha. I am from Nepal, but I am delighted to be here because I feel like our cultures are very similar in so many different levels. So just like her, I also work at Houston Galveston Institute as an in-school therapist at three Lamar elementary schools. And I also serve as a psychotherapist to open community counseling. And I do also have my own private practice, Mindful Conversations. And thank you so much for allowing us to share this platform with you all.
Perfect. And so I kind of want to open. So the way I want this to be set up is I want this to be like an open discussion with everyone. I don't want us to just sit here and kind of like just talk. I want everyone to kind of collaborate with us. So we're going to be asking questions. Feel free to join into the discussion because genuinely we do want to hear from you, our women, our Latina women who are out here. You know, like what do you need from us? How can we help? How can we help better serve our communities? Right. And so feel free at any point. You can stop. You can raise your hands. Feel free to join us in the discussions. And so I kind of want to start with, what does it mean to break generational chains? What does it mean to take care of your soul? What does that mean for anyone? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that they can hear you.
Thank you. I personally have had a lot of experience in being like the first one in my family to go to therapy and really mend those generational protective mechanisms that have been passed down to me. I think a lot of what I experienced and what was modeled to me growing up was being very protective in a way that didn't allow for vulnerability. And so I spent a lot of my life looking for spaces to feel safe in being vulnerable and had a hard time finding them within my own family. So that led me to go about finding those spaces in a way that wasn't safe. And as I got into therapy and recognized those patterns, I was able to create that safe environment within the relationship I have with my mother and saw how specifically being somebody that's queer and being somebody that has to push the envelope in how I show up and not allowing any, I guess, pushback on my authenticity, right? Like my authenticity could make people feel uncomfortable and not allowing that to maneuver or move or sway the way that I show up in the world. So having the ability to be vulnerable in that and create that vulnerable space with my mom then extended her to be able to create that space with like my grandma. And so it was really interesting to see how my grandma and my mom also have this protective mechanism of not wanting to be vulnerable. And me being the example of vulnerability within our family allowed for that trickle effect. So now we're having very open and honest and candid conversations. And it started with me. Like, I think oftentimes we look to our grandparents or that matriarchal figure as somebody that is so strong and can do no wrong, but really they're hurting and they need that space as well. And so being that example and just like shining my light allowed for those chains to be broken within my own family. And I'm really thankful to have tools like therapy because it's allowed me to just be that much more authentic and live a fully embodied life.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. That was beautiful. And it does also help bring awareness, right? Like we are here to change what we're taught, right? Like growing up, I feel like it's almost taught to us Latin women, right? You have to be strong, you have to be powerful, you have to take care of your siblings, you have to take care of your family, you have to learn to cook, you have to learn to clean. But where in that are we taught how to take care of ourselves? When and sometimes it almost feels selfish, no? Like you almost feel guilty for taking that time for yourself, for making that moment of self-care, right? It's almost like unheard of, right? Like we don't get taught these things. We don't get, glorified when we take that free time for ourselves, but our bodies need it. Our souls need it, our minds need it, because it almost brings me back to that statement of like, you can't fill anyone's cup if yours is empty, right? Like you can't process that way. You can't show up for other people if you're not even showing up for yourselves. And so I kind of also want to talk about, some examples and ways then in which we can continue to show up for ourselves, our souls. And to that, I'll let Adriana take over for a
Thank you.
moment.
Well, actually, what I found that it's useful as a woman, as Latina, as Mexicana, is recognizing that we are taught to do all to go by through the struggles of our lives, to do it up by ourselves, or being the head of change, as you were saying, like the first one. And we are taught to do it alone. And so it is curious that you are taught to do it alone, and also you, and also you, and also you, and also me. And we can share, as you were discussing it earlier today in the morning. Uh, we could share. We could share. We could identify ourselves in the struggles of the others. And in recognizing that, we can find the tools and we can find what the ideas that maybe we needed, but we cannot do it alone. And so for me, doing it a way of showing for myself in any struggle is looking for my friends. That's it. And then my therapist, but first my friends. You know? And this is important, having the possibility to create the kind of relationships that we need in order for us to feel safe, because this is not a safe world for being female and for being Latinas. And so we better build ourselves the relational spaces in which we can be ourselves, being authentic, and be able to collaborate with each other and reflect together about the struggles that we are having. For me, that's like what I have, and that's my go-to tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it almost brings up that sense of need for community, right? Like you want to be able to speak about these things. You want to be empowered by women who also have struggled in either similar ways, same ways, different ways, but we can learn from one another in that way. And I think that's so powerful, right? Because beyond therapy, right? You can go to your therapist, you can talk about these things, but also having a group of women to help uplift you in the moments that maybe you can't afford to go to a therapy session, maybe you can't make it to that week's, maybe your therapist is on vacation. There might be different reasons, but having that support system outside of that as well is also important, right? Because I'm hearing so many beautiful stories today that have genuinely empowered even me, myself, sitting here, and there are resources out there, right? Like, so at HGI Counseling, we do offer very low cost therapy services to the community. And so part of my outreach, and I want to make this known for everybody, for all my Latino women, is that we do have also bilingual therapists. We offer low cost therapy. We have therapists who are in the schools. We have therapists working with first year teachers. Like, we're trying to cover all the bases. And so I guess my next question is almost like, what can we continue to do to show up for all of you? Like, is there any events you would like to see? Is there anything else you would like to almost expand on in the communities to be able to have things like these where women can come together and we can empower one another?
Can you come?
Sorry, I know that.
So the only suggestion I was going to make is like an outside yoga session. I know people have done like goats and stuff, but none of that. But more so where you're, you get together. I've seen it happening at like resorts and spas. Well, everybody will get together, do their yoga, and then they'll be like, now we're gonna have a quick breakout session, and everybody just talks about their intent for the week. And it's similar to having like, I guess, like a mental health session where you just talk about the topic for the week, and kind of like, I don't want to say, because you're saying kind of have like a village, and it could be something that could be done monthly, like a kind of like a yoga. I don't want to say yoga club, but just like a club where you do yoga first, just to kind of clear your mind, set your intentions, and then talk about that topic. Or if you have a question that some women don't have a village, and that could be their once a month session where they could feel like they're seen, they're heard, and they're at least letting that energy out. Just something that's not just like a brunch, or drinking on, going to happy hour, because everybody, that's not the healthiest way to let it out. And speaking from experience, but just something there that women can do, and not just women obviously, but it could be offered for everybody. But if we're doing a women village, that's a really good way of doing that. So it's just a suggestion.
Thank you so much for that. And I love that idea.
Well, as I said, I'm a guest of Houston Galveston Institute right now, and there's an idea. Maybe you should have, well, in Mexico, we have something called Círculos de Mujeres, like women circles. I don't know how. Villages. That's better.
Yeah.
And I think that's a way, maybe with yoga, but maybe not. Maybe talking. Maybe somebody can show up and say, okay, you know what? I'm having trouble because, I don't know, I found out that my daughter is pregnant, or I found out that my husband is cheating, or I found out, and I need somebody to talk to. And we are not professionals. Well, I mean, the one that I facilitate, I'm there. No, but the idea is that we can support each other with a set of rules that we know a lot, because that's the paradigm in which we work. And well, that's an idea. You can have Círculos de Mujeres here, and those are widely extensive in Mexico, also online. So that would be also a choice for you.
Yeah, that sounds like almost like, I honestly, I love the idea. It almost like sparks something in there for me. And I'm curious, does anybody else have any ideas, anything they would like to see in the community?
Let me share something real quick. I really love I think that's a fantastic idea, because this is something I've been trying to sort of start at schools. So majority of my, like almost 99% of my clients are Latina communities. So what I find really challenging is, so students are referred by teachers, principals, because they see various behaviors in them, right? So when I started to work with students, the parents, like dads, are almost never forthcoming. Moms, they're very hesitant. They think I can just work with the child and don't bother us, kind of attitude. And it takes like at least 5-6 sessions with the child until they start to like trust me, right? So then they will be like more open to ideas, but I still see that reluctance, that hesitant, and they will talk about, oh, my mom used to do this, I've seen that in my brothers or uncles. But so we're talking about generational cycle here, so how do we break that? How do we start having conversation? What can I do better? What can I do more? Because I would really love to hear ideas. We can bounce it around here, since you guys are all from the sort of same community. So let us know, what do you think? And so one of the things I wanted to start was having open forum, like, and I don't want to put it like, oh, mental health forum, because that would be very discouraging, right? So what can I do? How can I word it out so it's not that intimidating?
I almost want to open that up to the audience. Like, is there any way? So kind of her thought process is that she wants to open up like a mental health forum for parents at the schools in order to be able to talk about mental health, how to support their children, right? Because in breaking some of those generational chains, a lot of the older generations, they truly don't believe in therapy, right? They think it's almost invasive. Like, you're trying to come into my life, you're trying to tell me how to parent, you're trying to tell me I'm doing, and that's not what therapy is, right? That's not what it's about. We're trying to just figure out how to help. But in order to figure out how to help, we have to understand the entire family system, right? Like, we can't just change one part of it, because that leaves so many other parts out, and that can only make for temporary change. That doesn't make for long lasting change. And so I almost want to open that question up to everyone. Like, how do you think that she can present that in a way that would be receptive to more people to want to be a part of that? And I wonder if anyone has like almost any ideas for that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm the mother of three grown children. I think we've already introduced ourselves today. 26, 25, and 22. Oldest are girls, my son, the youngest. So, but my observation, having been an involved parent when they were of school age, was the organization of parents. What did we call it?
PTO, PTM,
PTO.
PTA.
PTA, but I nicknamed it something else, like
Okay.
kind of like there could be more of us. There are so many children, and only 7, 9, 17 parents come to the PTOs. And sometimes they're ready to make the tamales and to help with the snow cones and on field day or certain events throughout the school year. But they don't come to that meeting where we do talk about, like, it should be more than just how are we going to make money for the 5th grade graduation, or how it's more like how are we raising our children. I'm very moved, and I'm sure everyone here in some form or fashion is connected to an educator, and with what's happening in Houston ISD, I cannot imagine the trauma to the teachers, the students, like it's funneling down, and the same synergy that we use to empower our children is being challenged right now because it's reversed, where a parent should be prepared to support a teacher that's teaching their child, but it has to complete the circle, right? And I'm going to do my part at home so my kid can do that so you can fulfill your dedication to being a teacher. Or else if a kid's not learning, growing, expanding, maturing under your care, then why are you a teacher? Get another job. But my point was that there is very little awareness of how we can develop great children. And what does the word great mean? Does it mean that you're going to be more rich, you're going to have a blue collar job, or you're going to have white collar? Why can't we all like share that energy? Like in this room, if we all put all the money we have in one pot and then divided it, we'd all have as much money. And that's the same way with education, with resources. If we put all our talent in one pot and then divide it, the responsibility of bettering our people so that we are recognized as upholding and upstanding citizens, not just in America, but all over the world, representing where we come from. And so I think an opportunity to educate parents on why your kid is a bully and why he is kind of an empath or the victim. Stop being a victim. Well, he's being victimized. So as long as somebody doesn't help strengthen him out of that role in the dynamic, then there's always going to be the mean kid. Why is the kid mean? Let's find out. Why are kids using drugs? Let's find out. Is it for mental health? They don't know how to cope. They don't know how to communicate what they're feeling, that there are more emotions than just mad, angry, and sad. Happy, angry, and sad. I think that's ours. There's like 160 of them, and we just need to know how to determine what it is and how to help one another. And I think that's what we're lacking. Like you said, we're going to bars, we're going getting drinks, we're having lunch, we're doing baseball, we're doing ballet, but how's that helping from the inside out? So holistic, and then just that interaction of finding out what we're doing wrong and what is working. I don't know.
I'm sorry if
No,
I
I love
dragged it
that.
out.
No,
but-
that was a great, I love that discussion, and it sparked almost so many thoughts for me. It almost, the first thing that popped into my mind is like, we're having these discussions, but are we having the right discussions? Are we talking about the things that need to be talked about? Like, how do we break generational trains I keep saying trains, chains, if we don't actually discuss it, if we don't talk about what that means for us and our families, for us dealing with our elders, our grandparents, our parents, right? Like, what does that actually mean? And how do we go about that, right? How do we go about this change?
That sort of reminded me about this session with this mom I had some time ago. We were talking about how she needs to take care of her mind, body, and soul before she starts to take care of rest of her family. And she's like, I need to be strong. I need to be strong for my family. I'm like, what does strength mean? What does it mean to be a strong woman or mom? And then we explored that idea. And then I said, kids learn more from watching us how we take care of ourselves than you telling them, do this, do that, wake up in the morning, eat healthy, exercise, all these things. So I think that sort of helped her to see that, oh, kids are watching me and they're learning from what I do, how I take care of myself. So I wonder if we need to have more conversation along this line.
Just trying to put together everything that I'm listening because my head is spinning. Also, I'm a therapist too by myself. Yeah, by myself. I'm a therapist. But an idea that I was having, I was trying to put like the Círculo de Mujeres together with like Círculo de Madres Poderosas or something like
Yes, I
that
like
Yes.
to bring so that we take mental health out of it because we know,
Yes.
well, the number one thing that I think will bring Hispanics together is food, right?
Absolutely.
But I think also all of us have this need to be the best mother that we can be, and having us
Yes.
like a circle like that, Círculo de Madres Poderosas, I think it will bring moms together. And then you sweep in and I think it's the education of taking the fear out of parenting because we are raised a lot in fear and guilt and shame, and just kind of sweeping. It's like there's a better way to actually raise your child, not fear-based. So kind of sweeping it in there after that, but just trying to give them just positive things. Food always works too, but just having that positive twist of not necessarily like we're going to call it mental health, but I do see. So I started a podcast like maybe like 4 weeks ago to just open up the mental health conversation, just to take out the stigma. And it's like, what is therapy? Like, who needs to go to therapy? Like, do I have to be crazy to go to therapy? And I'm not using like professional terms, but that's the terms that people understand. So, it's like you don't have to be loca to go to therapy. You can go to therapy just to have somebody to talk to. And some people have great friends and some of us do not. So, it's just going therapy for that.
So we can have a círculo.
Yes. No, and I actually really love that title that you came up with because not only is it supporting, but it's also empowering, right? Like poderosa, like it makes you feel like I should go to this group because I'm going to leave feeling amazing, right? Like it almost takes that stigma of like, what are they going to talk about? How's it going to be? Is there going to be food? Like it almost takes that away. Like I'm walking away with something, right? And I love that because that just hits something for me. And then I also think it's also, this stigma of like the perfect mother, because there is none. There's no perfect person. There's no perfect mother. We are all doing the best that we can with what we have, with the knowledge that we have, the experiences that we have, and we're all putting it together and trying to make something of that. And I think that's powerful in itself. And then also it sparked for me, you said something else. Oh, where's my brain going? Okay, you go. It left my head for just a moment.
I was just thinking about how something I'm noticing that happens here in the US, and that's only my perception. I'm not saying that that's the reality, but I think that often it gets like confused, the term or the idea of talking about mental health, that it's equal to talk about pathology. And mental health, like mental health awareness, is not the same as talking about pathology. Mental health is also talk about community and like bonding and taking care of each other. No? So That's what I was thinking. Like in these groups of how was it? Círculos de madres poderosas. No, no, maybe you're not going to talk about mental health. You're going to talk about community, and you are going to talk. And then, well, yeah, your mental health, of course, is going to improve. No, but it is not the same when we talk about mental health awareness and awareness of pathology, because it's not the same.
And that just sparked what I wanted to say before, also about this concept that you brought up about how like some people think like you have to be almost like crazy to go to therapy. You have to have depression, you have to have anxiety. There has to be like this major reason for you to go to therapy. When the truth is, you can go to therapy for anything, for a life change, for a new relationship that you don't know what to do with. You know, you're going to college now as a first generation Latina. That is super, it's scary. It's almost intimidating, right? Like what to expect, how to navigate this, moving away from home if you're moving, right? Like all these life changes, life decisions. That is also what therapy is for, right? Like new relationships, a marriage, maybe things aren't going well. Maybe you're having struggles with your children, right? Like maybe you're just not feeling your best self and you kind of just want to talk about it and explore what's happening, right? Because therapy is so much more than just mental illnesses. It's about just life choices, life decisions, life, just help, just support, right? Just having someone to genuinely talk to. Because I think about, we all have friends, we all have someone that we talk to, right? But sometimes you don't want to talk about certain things repetitively to the same person, right? Because then you're almost like, I sound like a broken record. Maybe I'm bothering her, right? But that's what therapy is also for, right? Like if you need somewhere to go and put your feelings and like, hey, I don't know, I keep thinking about this. I know I keep talking about it, but that's what therapy is also for. So we can ask those questions like, why is this coming up so much for you, right? Like, let's talk about it. Let's explore that, right? Therapy is so much more than just mental illness. And I think that's also a super important stigma that, a lot of people think like, well, I'm not depressed, I don't have anxiety, so, I don't need therapy. But the reality is, I feel like we all need therapy, right? And we all need more Latina therapists that can also understand us, our struggles, the things that we talk about, the things that we deal with, these generational chains and what that means for us, right? And so being an advocate for your friends, for your family members, if anyone feels like they need help, anyone seems like they need to talk, and just being an advocate and also throwing ideas at us, right? Like if there's things that you'd like to see in the community, things that you want to change, like it starts with us, right? Like we start the change, we break the chains. Well, at this point, I guess I would like to open it up to any questions, anybody else with ideas, anything else, kind of on anything that we've talked about. Feel free, join the conversation. Comments. Yeah. Sorry, we hope the microphone part isn't intimidating, but feel free, come chat with us.
So I feel like everyone in this room is pretty open to mental health and would want to be a part of the circle, but how do you extend that out to people that are not aware that it's more than just like taboo and all of that? So that would be my question, or that's what I was thinking when you were like talking about the circles. I was like, how do you extend that out?
Yeah, and I think. Did you want to go?
Yeah, well, I have a circle in Mexico, and the way that we did it there, like, we started being 9 women, and today we are, I think, 26 to 30, and we meet every other week. And the way that we do it is that we are like clients and therapists, and then people just started to join and to knew about it through the community, through the same community. And then, well, that's how. And in the ad, I said, this is not therapy, but it is really therapeutic to be together. So that's kind of the sense that, okay, we are not doing something as called as psychotherapy. I'm a psychotherapist. We are not doing that. We are talking with each other, and we are sharing. That's the way that we did it, at least in Mexico.
Yeah, and that almost brought up for me that I think it was you that said it, like if we all put our ideas together, and the amount of resources that each one of us has. And if we all put it together, I mean, the resources are endless, the ideas, the experiences, they're endless, right? And so almost advocating that, like if you're in the circulo, let's say, like just talking about your experience, right? And that will attract other people, right? Because we're not here to only talk about mental health and all these things. We're here to talk about, like, what is it to be in your shoes? Like, what does that feel like on a regular Tuesday, right? Like, what is it to know that you have to take your kid to school, drop them off, they have to be there at a certain time, they have to eat, they have to sleep, they have to do homework, right? Like, what does that even look like, right? Like, how does that feel? Like, what tips, what resources do you have, right? What programs do you put your kids in? Like, these are things that, and beyond just even mothers, like doing a mother's group, maybe doing a father's group, because even fathers realistically don't get that much support because there's also that stigma for men. But just having these support groups for each categories for young teenagers going to college, right? Like that support group. How do I apply for the FAFSA? What does that even look like, right? Because sometimes those are questions your parents don't know how to answer for you, right? When I was first generation college student and I had to fill it out and I was like, Mom, and she was like, don't even look at me. I don't know. I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to answer these questions. And I was like, okay. And I had to figure it out, but that is intimidating in itself, right? So just advocating for these groups that we don't just talk about mental health. You don't even have to say that. This is a support group. We are like, or whatever we call it, for the Madres Poderosas, these circles, like we just come and we talk, there's food, we talk, we laugh, and we have a good time. And it's also about building community, right? Because I feel like we all in a way long for community. And so that's really what it's about. Mental health is just a plus that we talk about.
Yeah, so in my Nepalese community, that's what we started, like Nepalese leadership group. We did not want to name it like mental health group and anything like that because that would just scare away everybody. So we meet every 2-3 months and then we bring food, of course. And so we just talk about, we have like 3 speakers whenever we meet. So they just talk about their journey into whatever they're doing. And then it started to become like this support network. We help each other, we encourage each other, and even like public speaking, there are people who help like the other, folks with different issues. So we realize this has become like a support network, like, support for each other. So I was just thinking, don't wait for other people to start a groups, just start yourself, just few friends, just meet for coffee, I don't know, for lunch. And that's how you start building that network, that support system for one another. And then when you have built that trust and relationship and rapport, then you can talk about other difficult things. So, yeah.
I love that. And so I'm not sure how we are on time right now, but I want to open the floor if there's any other ideas, any other comments, questions. I just want to say I also do have brochures for anybody who might be interested or have a family member, a friend. You want to pass the brochure along to HGI Counseling. And so again, we do offer mental health services for individuals, couples, families. And so at low cost therapy service, we do have bilingual therapists. And so encourage, be an advocate for your community as well. Encourage your friends, your family to go out and seek services, get the help that they need because there are services out there in the community for you. And I would love to also be able to advocate more resources for all of my Latina community. And thank you so much for having us, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
So sorry, I got wrapped up in the conversation back there too. Ladies, I just want to
thank each and every one of y'all for attending. It's already 3:00. Some of y'all would love to go home. Please go home. But what I want to do right now, if we can just take a quick moment, and I think we're going to close it out exactly the way Lacey opened, which is we'll start here. I can have everybody and those online also, if I can have you just take a second, and it's one of the things that Lacey kind of did that I want you to do, which is the momentum, but it's a short version of it. If I can just have y'all just slowly close your eyes. Just close your eyes for me for just a second. And I want you to be here with me. When I have my worst anxiety, there's an audio on my phone that I usually listen to, and there's a part that I want to share. And it goes like, when you're at your worst and you can't anymore, it's me and you who are walking through it. It's me and you, hand in hand, that eventually reach the destination. It's me and you, literally me and you. Know that in whatever space you are, I am there with you too, because you're never alone. Ladies, with that, thank y'all so much. We're going to stick around for a little bit longer. Some of us are going to wrap up, but I do want to release y'all to go home to your families. And y'all have an amazing Memorial weekend. Thank y'all.